Sup you beautiful people. Hope you've had a fantastic day. Welcome back to a brand new episode of What If Deku Wielded One for All Without Limits. If you guys enjoy this what if, comment down below and let me know. And go ahead and check out other what ifs in the channel. After watching this video, don't forget to shower some appreciation onto the incredible author responsible for this fanfiction. The link is conveniently waiting for you in the description box down below. Before we get into it though, don't forget to subscribe and leave a like, and also share this video with your friends. So let's start this video. With a blank expression on his face, which was entirely visible because his breathing mask was hanging loosely from his neck, Izuku made his way back walking almost mechanically. The reason for this was that his happiness and excitement were so much that they went beyond what his body and face could express, and that was entirely due to what happened a few minutes again when he saved Katsuki from the sludge villain. He had been entirely truthful when he told him that it didn't matter whether they got along or not. If Izuku saw facing troubles they couldn't solve on their own, he was going to do his damnedest to help because that was what a hero did, and if Izuku wanted to become a great one, he needed to get on that mindset. Something which he did long ago. His mindset has been such since even before he got his quirk. Thinking of his quirk made him recall how he had been able to hit the sludge villain with one of his armament-enhanced punches. Amidst the praises and scolding the pro-heroes had given him, they had confirmed that the sludge villain was basically immune to blunt force trauma. It had thrown everyone for a loop when Izuku had defeated him using such, which made everyone wonder if there was more to his quirk than just strength enhancement. Izuku of course knew that there was certainly more than that to his quirk, but he had not elaborated because at the time he had thought that the armament aspect was exactly that, a very powerful enhancement to all his physical capabilities. But seeing that with it he was capable of damaging quirk users that were immune to those methods of attack made him realize that there was even more to it than that. It wasn't very surprising, since armament was the product of the still unknown energy that coursed through his body, but it was still unexpected. It seemed like he was going to have to do more research into his quirk. After everyone was done praising him and, curiously enough, Katsuki for their powerful quirks, they and the crowd of civilians were ushered away so the heroes and the repair crews could quickly start dealing with the aftermath of the sludge villain's attack and the destruction caused by the fight respectively. When they left, Katsuki had shouted at him about him not needing his help and that his quirk was still stronger than his. Izuku had just waved him off before walking away without looking at him. Izuku's eyebrow twitched as he recalled that. Man, I can't wait until we start formal hero training at you. So I can have a legitimate reason that doesn't go against my code of conduct to smack some sense and manners into that ungrateful son of a. I am here! Izuku had only a second to wonder just how fast was All Might that it only took 2 rapid blinks of his eyes before he reached him after entering the edge of complete mantra field. That speed is ridiculous, he thought with a gulp. That was when the rest of his mind caught up with what he was seeing and analyzing, and his eyes widened in shock. All Might! What are you doing here? All Might laughed boomingly as he put his fist on his hips. I wanted to speak with you, young Midoriya-kun, he said as he looked down at him, smile widening as he noticed that Izuku's surprise was due to his presence rather than his abrupt appearance. It seemed like the perception aspect of his quirk was strong enough to detect him when he was moving at 70% speed. It was extremely impressive to say the very least. If it was possible, Izuku's eyes widened even further. You wanted to speak with me? What about? He almost squeaked his question as he gushed, staring up at the number 1 hero with stars in his eyes. Izuku felt like he was going to pass out. This was the second time he saw his idol on the same day, and now that idol had apparently looked for him specifically in order to speak with him. It was official. Best day ever. He somehow even knew his name. Please, someone pinch him for this must be a dream. Earlier, when you ran to face the sludge villain to save that kid, Izuku's eyes widened at the seriousness in his voice, even though his fearless grin was still on his face. Your legs moved on their own, right? You saw the pleading expression on his face, his eyes filled with despair, and you ran to help him even though you saw that professional heroes with more experience than you couldn't do anything. Am I correct? The further All Might spoke, the wider Izuku's eyes got. When he finished, Izuku stammered for a second before he hurriedly nodded his head. Yes. That was exactly what happened. He got sure of himself as he spoke. His eyes got that glint of determination that showed All Might his conviction. I will never stand by idly and watching if I know I am able to do something to help, no matter how little or insignificant it is. Ah, yes. I saw that in the way you moved without hesitation and heard it in your words you said to that boy whom you saved even though there was bad blood between you two. You moved in to save him because he needed help and it was the right thing to do. He said that with an impressed voice full of pride. It made Izuku blush in embarrassment, as a huge grin appeared on his face. Earlier I told you that you could become a great hero if you continued training your body and quirk, as you have been obviously doing. But now I know that you can become the greatest hero in history. Even greater than I. Izuku froze as he looked up at All Might. What are you talking about, All Might? He asked, his voice small and strained. He started to laugh in disbelief. There's no way I can become greater than you. That's simply impossible. Izuku was sure of that. Haki was an extremely powerful quirk, yes, but it was limited by how much his body, mind and spirit could grow, and Izuku wasn't delusional enough to think that there was threshold he wasn't going to be able to overcome because of that natural limitations of his body. As far as he knew, All Mights had no limits to what he could do, unlike him. All Might grinned knowingly. That's where you are wrong, young Midoriya. Why, you ask? For I have seen that you already have the best mindset a hero could have. One of selfness and willingness to put your life in the line for the sake of others. And if that wasn't enough, you have a very powerful and peculiar quirk that not only allows you to sense everything around you, but it also lets you make others hesitate and enhance your physical strength exponentially. Izuku's entire body was red and he resembled a tomato as he stared at everything but All Might, who was looking at him earnestly. He was so touched, happy and excited that he lost his ability to form words. All Might continued speaking. It's because of this that I deem you worthy to inherit my quirk and become the next symbol of peace. The one whose name and presence strikes fear on the wicked and evildoers. Izuku Midoriya. You will be next torch bearer of One for All. Izuku blinked and cocked his head to the side. Say what now? Inko blinked slowly as she looked at her son. Okay, so let me get this straight. After you intervened and defeated the villain that kidnapped Bakugo-kun, something which I am still conflicted about how to feel by the way, you impressed All Might of all heroes and he offered you a chance to train with him every day for the next 10 months because he doesn't want your potential to be wasted. Did I get that right? Izuku nodded his head slowly. Yes? He confirmed unsurely as he shifted his weight from one feet to another. He hated lying to his mother, but the true circumstances of what his training with All Might were too delicate for those not directly involved and affected to know. Still, he refused to not tell his mother some measure of the truth, and thankfully, All Might understood and even agreed with his reasoning. Izuku thought that All Might was just happy that he had agreed to his offer. While Izuku was not someone that craved power, he knew that he had limits that could very well mean that he couldn't become the hero that he wanted to be. All Might's quirk, One for All, was the answer to that issue. A quirk that stockpiled power from previous bearers that could be passed down to a new one in order to stockpile more of it and make the quirk stronger than it was before. And according to All Might, he would be 9th bearer of the power. That means that when I accept the power, I will be able to be as strong as All Might with the possibility of becoming stronger by stockpiling even more power through the course of my life. And that is without counting the enhancement of armament and the effect it could possibly have on Mantra and King's Will. Still, holy fucking crap, this can't be real. Inko narrowed her eyes at her son in suspicion, and it didn't help that his eyes stared to wonder as he began to sweat buckets. She knew that Izuku was telling her the truth about training with All Might, but there was something else he was not telling her. Izuku knew that lying to her was out of the question, as he knew the consequences of doing such a thing would be dire for him. So that meant that whatever he was not telling her was because he couldn't, rather than he didn't want to do it. That didn't make her feel better about allowing her son to partake in what could possibly a very dangerous training regime, but Inko sighed and smiled at him. I think that's a great, 1 in a million opportunities that you shouldn't waste, Izuku. I will allow you to train with All Might as long as it doesn't involve anything too dangerous, and you keep your number 1 spot at Orodera. You might want to become a hero, but that doesn't mean you should slack off on your other current responsibilities to prioritize the other, she said sternly. but her proud and encouraging smile was still in place. Izuku beamed at his mother and picked her up in a bear hug, the two of them laughing as he twirled her around. "Thanks, Mom. You don't know how much this means to me," he said after he put her down when she told him to do so by smacking him on the arm. "Of course I do, you big oaf," she told him matter-of-factly, using the voice she used to use with him as a baby as she pulled on his cheek with her index finger and thumb. "You still have all of those All Might posters, figurines, comics and videos in your room. I think I know how much being offered training by your idol means to you," she said dryly, releasing his cheek with a sharp tug that had him protesting in pain. Izuku blushed in embarrassment as his mother mentioned his almost unhealthy obsession with the number one hero. Yeah? I guess you are right, he said with a nervous laugh as he scratched the back of his head. Inko smirked haughtily. "I'm always right, Izuku. You better remember that." A bead of sweat trailed down Izuku's temple as all of a sudden his mother started cackling manically. It never went through Izuku's mind that Inko, his sweet and beautiful mother that while scary sometimes when she worried about him, was already formulating plans on how she was going to use his unquestionable future popularity as hero when he became a professional. That he managed to impress All Might enough that the number one hero wanted to train him was enough proof for Inko that Izuku was going to be someone great in the future, someone worth making a few investments on. For Inko, the past 10 years, had turned into a businesswoman. And as such, Inko had to make investments to get the things she wanted. And Inko only truly wanted 3 things. 1. She wanted to see her son accomplish his dreams of becoming a hero. 2. He wanted to have enough money to always live comfortably, and without worrying about indulging on her hobbies. And 3. She wanted lots of grandbabies to spoil. She knew that Izuku was well on his way on reaching his dreams, and she has already accomplished her second goal. Her third goal was dependent entirely on Izuku, but knowing his personality, and how girls were about powerful, caring and handsome guys like Izuku, she was not too worried about it. That night Izuku went to sleep amidst thought of what his training with All Might was going to entail, and the sudden and unexpectedly creepy giggles that would randomly originate from his mother's room. Every time he heard them, he would shudder in terror, wondering if his mother's quirk had evolved somehow into causing defenseless and innocent sons to be afraid. Katsuki Bakugo glared at the ceiling of his room as he laid on his bed, his hand resting behind his head. His lips were curled into a snarl as he growled in anger, and it was only because of the threat of his mother that he wasn't blowing everything in his rage. That fucking nerd, thought Katsuki in anger, as he recalled everything that happened that day. How he was easily kidnapped by that sludge villain, and how that same villain had somehow managed to take control of his body and used his quirk to wreak havoc. While Katsuki wasn't necessarily concerned about the latter, it was the former that angered him. That, and the fact that it was Izuku Midoriya of all people that saved him. And his quirk, that black substance that covered his arms and legs and gave him enough strength to knock out a villain that had a quirk that essentially immune to physical attacks with one single punch. Smoke started to trail up behind Katsuki's head as his hands heated up in response to his anger. That asshole also dared to hide something as powerful as that for so long. It was the fact that Izuku had been successful in doing so that angered him so much. While Katsuki had heard the rumors of the things Izuku did that pointed to the fact that he had a quirk, Katsuki never saw it with his own 2 eyes. Which meant that he just chalked it up to the school blowing things out of proportion and Izuku himself telling that to everyone to trick them into treating him as if he was worth the air he breathed. However, now seeing it with his own 2 eyes, Katsuki came to a realization that had him cursing up a storm. At the moment, Izuku was easily stronger than him. What happened today showed that without a doubt. And in Katsuki's mind, the existence of someone his age stronger than him was something that he just couldn't accept. Much less if that someone got his quirk much later than him and refused to use it out of a stupid sense of honor that only helped to limit him. It just angered Katsuki to the point he wanted to explode. The fact that Izuku had ignored him entirely when he confronted him after the professional heroes urged them to get away, so they could deal with the aftermath of the sludge villain's attack, wasn't helping matters at all. "Don't you dare think you are better than me now, bastard," Katsuki scowled. "Just you wait, Deku. I'll show you who's got the best fucking quirk between us and crush you until you die." Why are we here again?" asked Izuku, covering his nose by applying pressure with his index finger and thumb. He was currently at Dagoba Municipal Beach Park. There were tons of trash accumulated, and needless to say, the smell of waste combined with the salty air of the ocean made for a disgusting combination that Izuku could barely stand. Still, All Might had set this place as the one in which they would meet. Speaking of the number one hero, because we are going to clean it and restore it to its previous glory as we train you to use One for All, said Toshinori Yagi, or as Izuku still knew him as, All Might, in his true form of an overly skinny man with a sunken face and eyes and wearing baggy clothes to compensate for his transformation when he used One for All and buffed up to the point he even became taller. Since Izuku knew about One for All, there was no need to hide the fact that he had two forms and even his current limitations due to his injuries. It made easier to explain the haste in which why he wanted to pass down his power and get the new torch bearer to a point in which said power could be used effectively and indefinitely. That makes sense then, said Izuku with a nod. He knew that this place was supposed to be extremely beautiful in the past, and truth to be told, seeing it in such a sorry and disgusting state made him want to do something about it. And besides, there was more on being a hero than having flashy powers and fighting villains. Helping with plain tasks such as this were the jobs of heroes too. Am I going to get One for All right away, or must I train before I am able to use it? Asked Izuku seriously. He had experience with quirks that enhanced the user's physical abilities, the armament aspect of Haki being a prime example of this. And he knew that if his body was unable to handle the strain of enhancement, then two things could happen. 1. His body will get destroyed under the strain of using that amount of power, or 2. He won't be able to use the power at all. The latter happened in his case as he couldn't go beyond a level of enhancement with armament until he trained his body enough to handle it. Toshinori shook his head in the negative. Normally, that would be the case, but... He started speaking as he turned to look at Izuku, giving his body an inspecting look. The boy was wearing workout clothes suited for the warm weather, and they showed his musculature. All Might could see that those muscles were not meant for show. Rather, they were meant to be used. Not like he needed to confirm this, since he had already seen what the kid was capable of 2 days ago. Considering that you have been training your body to handle the stress of your own quirk, I'd say that right now you are ready to receive One for All to start getting used to the amount of power it gives you. Stockpiling more power will come after you have managed to successfully handle 100% of One for All's current output. Izuku nodded. I understand. Even though my body is ready to handle the power, that doesn't mean that it is going to be used to it. Meaning that I will have to gradually increase the percentage of power I use in order to not be harmed by the stress using it causes. Unlike my quirk, I doubt One for All makes you aware of when too much power is too much power before you end up with bones broken and muscles tore, I suppose. Mused Izuku thoughtfully as he grasped his chin, now able to ignore the foul odor surrounding him since he had better and more important things to focus on. Toshinori grinned, blood trailing down the corners of his mouth. Exactly. We don't want you injuring yourself too much outside of base strength, speed, durability, and stamina training after all. He paused before he turned to look at Izuku. He suddenly buffed up and stroked a pose as he flexed his muscles. Okay, let us waste time no more, young Midoriya. It's the moment for you to inherit One for All. Izuku stiffened and squared his shoulders tightly as he looked up at All Might, the man's words a distraction enough for him to ignore the bizarre transformation he just went through. I'm ready to do whatever it takes, All Might. I will do my best to not let you down. All Might chose him, out of millions, to bear the torch of his power and to become the next symbol of peace, and like everything he did, Izuku was going to give it his all to accomplish this task to the best of his abilities. All Might seemed to get pumped up by Izuku's answer as he flexed his muscles even more and laughed his loudest laugh yet. That's the spirit! Now! He trailed off and reached upwards, using his index and thumb to pull a string of hair from his head. He presented it to Izuku with an overdramatic and honestly unnecessary flourish. Eat this, Izuku blinked. What? In order to gain One for All you must ingest the current's bearer DNA, and hair is the least disgusting part of my body that you could eat, he explained, practically shoving the string of hair into Izuku's hand. Izuku blinked once again before slowly nodding. Bizarrely enough, that makes a surprising amount of sense, said Izuku with a bit of hesitation as he looked at the blonde hair he was holding between his finger. After a few moments he sighed and with reluctance he put it in his mouth, accumulating saliva in order to swallow it without issues. Even though he barely felt it because of this, he still gagged at the knowledge that he had willingly swallowed All Might's hair. It didn't matter if it had come from his idol, it was still disgusting. Now, it's going to take a few hours for your body to metabolize my hair and give you access to One for All. So, in the meantime, All Might suddenly turned into his true form as he trailed off, coughing blood. Let's talk about your own quirk. I know that you can use it to sense things around you, enhance your body and somehow distract your foes, but I want you to tell me everything you know about your quirk, so we can start hypothesizing on how it will affect it by One for All. Well, I named my quirk Haki Ambition because of how it works. What it does is that it gives me this energy, which grows by increasing both my physical and mental capabilities, that allows me to. Izuku explained mantra, armament, and King's will as best as he could to All Might, leaving nothing out about what he had managed to glean from his quirk in the past 10 years. All Might listened attentively and didn't interrupt Izuku throughout his explanation, only occasionally nodding his head in understanding and humming in thought. When Izuku finished after almost 30 minutes, Toshinori nodded sharply. Alright, I believe I have a good grasp of your quirk going by what you have told me, said All Might, hiding his shudder with the ease due to him being who he was. Izuku's potential had been enormous with only taking Haki and its 3 aspects into account. With that alone, Izuku would have been able to reach the top 10 in the heroes ranking easily. With One for All added to the sum, it honestly terrified him. It's necessary, thought Yagi grimly. The world needed someone even more powerful than All Might to face the upcoming threats, of that he was sure. And while it was going to take Izuku many years to reach a point where his name and presence alone would become a deterrent for villains and evildoers, Toshinori was 100% sure that the day will come when an era of absolute peace and prosperity for humanity will be reached, with Izuku as the catalyst that started it and the pillar that held it together. Also, All Might wasn't worried about making Izuku overwhelmingly powerful and him turning into a villain. Why, you ask? Because there was no way in hell that someone that jumped in to save someone they didn't like just because they looked like they needed help had it in them to use their quirk to hurt others or in an entirely selfish manner. Toshinori had not even a speck of worry on that front. With a bloody grin on his face, All Might addressed Izuku. Since One for All stockpiles physical power, I doubt it will affect mantra and King's will at all, but those aspects of your quirk are extremely powerful as they are and on their own. The armament aspect, however, he trailed off, thinking for a moment before he continued. When you used it to save young Bakugo 2 days ago, was that the limit to how much you could enhance yourself with it? Izuku pondered for a minute, rubbing his chin in thought as he recalled the event as he could. Truthfully, everything had been so fast and instinctual that there wasn't a whole lot he could recall, but thankfully it was enough to answer All Might's question. He made a SOSO gesture with his hand. I would say I could go about 1/10 further enhancement, give it or take it. Toshinori nodded in understanding and grinned, more blood leaking out of the corners of his mouth. That means that you will be able to use 35%, at the most, of One for All's maximum output right off the bat when no enhanced by armament Haki. With that in mind, our best bet would be to increase your base physical capabilities while training you to get used to how One for All feels and slowly increasing how much you can use. Since the strength of Haki grows as you do, we will be also training that as we go. After that we can look into using armament Haki and One for All at the same time. That was when Izuku finally realized that while All Might was impossibly powerful, his intelligence was also off the charts, which made him even more incredible and terrifying in his eyes. Izuku was glad that there wasn't a villain as powerful and intelligent as All Might. Someone as powerful as All Might but without his morals and views? Merely thinking about the possibility gave him the chills. Izuku and Toshinori continued talking with each other, theorizing about the different things Izuku would be capable of once he trained with One for All and exchanging training ideas and concepts in order to come up with the most efficient program for Izuku, making sure to include a time dedicated for cleaning the beach, which they were going to use as training for control for One for All. They also had to include the time Izuku was going to spend in school and studying and meditating, since in order for Haki to grow he needed to train his brain too. This was the end result. Mondays, Saturdays, sleeping time, 9 p.m. to 4 a.m., weighted running, 4 a.m. to 5 a.m., strength, speed, stamina training, 5 a.m. to 7:30 a.m. School 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. One for all control training 3:30 p.m. to 7 p.m. Studying homework meditation time 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Sundays, recovery day. The plan was even more intense than the one he was planning to follow before he met All Might, and Izuku felt excited and ready for it. He knew that it wasn't going to be easy and the desire to quit was going to increase each day that passed, but Izuku knew the importance of him accomplishing what he himself and All Might had set him to do. He was responsible of reaching a level of strength that made him worthy of being All Might's successor. This is the basic version of the program we are going to follow. We are going to make it more detailed as we go along, with including more things as we reach our goals on the go. You will also have to speak with your mother for the perfect diet to make the most out of this program. I know you can easily deal with it, Toshinori was saying as he held the sheet of paper in which they had written the program. The most important part of the program is getting you used to One for All, controlling it and increasing your output, which is the reason why we are going to dedicate more. He trailed off when he noticed Izuku stiffening suddenly from the corner of his eyes. Young Midoriya? Izuku looked up at him with wide eyes as he held up his hands. I think my body has assimilated One for All. It feels a lot like the energy Haki gives me, but while Haki energy feels like water flowing through my whole body in steady and powerful, but controlled manner, this energy feels like tightly coiled lightning centered in my core, content to stay like that but ready, happy and excited at the prospect of being released. All Might rose an eyebrow at this. Truly? To me, One for All feels like I have to clench my buttocks and scream in my heart smash when the time comes to use it. I know that One for All manifests differently from user to user, but the effects and how it feels is always the same. Perhaps it has to do with the mindset you have acquired due to the effects your quirk has on your psyche, pondered Toshinori as he scratched his chin. He shrugged and grinned in excitement as he buffed up again. No matter! Let's see what you've got. Izuku shared his grin, and with his experience on manipulating energy, he began to tentatively tap into the coiled lightning that was on his core and slowly bringing it out. The smell of burnt ozone began to slowly overpower the foul smell of the ruined beach as greenish-blue arcs of lightning began to originate from all over Izuku's body. As the visible skin of his body began to turn an orangish hue with many glowing red veins of power appearing over the skin, the grains of sand below them began to rise and swirl around Izuku as strong winds began to originate around him. Izuku could only look at his hands in wonder as All Might grinned and bellowed with happy laughter. The next 10 months were going to be the most interesting and exciting he's had in a long time, that's for sure. 10 months later, Toshinori looked around the Dagoba Municipal Beach Park, comparing it to how it looked 10 months ago. It honestly seemed like a completely different place, and with the sun setting over the horizon, with half of it already hidden and the sky already alternating from daytime and nighttime, he could see the appeal of which used to be spoken so fondly that this place used to have. An appeal that it regained thanks to his efforts, and that of the young man that was looking at the sunset from further into the beach, the salty water reaching his calves. After 10 months of arduous and continuous training, Izuku had changed noticeably. For instance, he had reached 6 feet in height, and his hair had grown a bit in length and turned spikier. Another thing of note was that despite his muscles growing noticeably more defined, he wasn't as buff as he used to be. This was because his muscles had grown denser instead of bigger, which was fine by him. While he wouldn't have minded becoming as muscular as All Might, he felt as if he wouldn't be as comfortable. He preferred a lither build, which would help on making villains underestimate his actual strength. When Izuku had explained this to him, Toshinori had agreed with his logic. There was proud and pleased grin on Toshinori's face as he continued to look at Izuku's back. He had been blown away by the teen's dedication and discipline, following the program to the letter and not even complaining about not getting enough sleep nor when the harshness, intensity and difficulty of the workouts increased. He did it all with a determined look in his eyes and a grin on his face that All Might suspected he had adopted after seeing him do the same so many times in the past 10 months. People tended to imitate those around them, even more so when they admired that person. Because of Izuku's perfect following of the plan and putting it his all to his training, he had managed to reach a level way beyond what All Might had expected, but had secretly hoped for. Along with managing to clean up the entire beach 1 week before the UA entrance examination day. He could still hear the trucks issued by the government of the city taking away the last of the trash to get rid of it or recycle it. Suddenly, Izuku cocked his head back, tightened his hands into fists, and flexed his biceps and roared with everything he got. Greenish-blue lightning arched from his body and patches of black armament Haki appeared all over his body as what was not covered by it turned to an orangish hue with red vein of power appearing all over his body. The water and wet sand around him exploded outwards as an expanding shockwave originated from Izuku with the resounding sound of air being suddenly displaced. Oh my, oh my! Toshinori got pumped up by the display he was witnessing, and he suddenly buffed up into his all-might form as he grinned and flexed his muscles. Goodness! He bellowed, drops of sweat trailing down his temple as he could also feel Izuku's king's will leaking from him. All Might knew that at the moment, Izuku would need all the energy he had at his disposal in order to effectively use that aspect of Haki against him. But the oppressive feeling of Izuku's will was both awe-inspiring to feel and a worthy challenge to shrug off, even to him. After a few seconds Izuku settled down, and he turned around and began to walk back towards All Might. The oppressive feeling of King's will disappearing first, and that was followed by the trails of armament Haki and Izuku's one for all. The sea water also slowly settled down, and turned back to normal as Izuku finally approached All Might, looking up at him with a grin, panting slightly as he was still high on adrenaline. I did it, All Might, he said with a grin as he raised his fist towards Toshinori. That you did, young Midoriya, he answered, doing the same and fist bumped Izuku solidly, smirking as his successor didn't even budge, showing that even his unenhanced form was nothing to scoff at. You performed almost impossibly beyond my expectations and surpassed our set goals even before the time limit. I can say without a single sliver of doubt no one is worthier of bearing the torch of one for all. At the earnest praise from his idol, tears slowly started leak from the corners of Izuku's eyes as he did his best to not let mucus leak from his nose too. It also went unsaid that in the 10 months that have passed Toshinori also got to know Izuku very well. He learned what made him tick, his character and what motivated him, and that, even more than his out-of-the-charts potential, was what made him worthy in his eyes. Izuku knew that this was what All Might was referring and that was the reason why he got emotional. Eventually, Izuku regained his composure, and he pulled his fist back and he let it fall at his side as his body visibly slumped and muscles relaxing with him sighing in relief as the adrenaline left him, leaving him feeling a bit groggy, but he still had enough energy to keep going. He smiled up at his idol. Thanks for everything, All Might. I will try my damn hardest to live up to your expectations and to never stray away from my path and the path you have given me the opportunity to walk on. That I promise you, said Izuku with fervor as he smacked his right fist in his chest. I know you are going to do so and more, my boy. Why? Because I chose you and you have proven it time and time again. I know you are not going to let me down, he said with epically but with an almost dismissive wave of his hand. For now, you have earned yourself a well-needed prolonged rest. I know that not training for a single day for you is impossible, but do your best to take it easy and get some R&R time. Use this period of time to let your body heal fully so you can be at your 100% for the UA entrance examination. Will do, said Izuku with an understanding nod before he dried his body using a towel that he pulled out from his backpack, which had been resting next to All Might's foot the entire time. Then he unstrapped his breathing mask from around his neck and put it away. He pulled out a loose sleeveless shirt that reached his thighs which he put on, and then he pulled out a flask filled with water. Izuku finally strapped his on his backpack and smiled at All Might again. Thanks again. I'll see you around, I guess. Toshinori watched Izuku walking away with an amused smile on his face. Even though he had shared almost everything with Izuku, key exceptions being the true origins of One for All, the fate of his sensei and the threat he was inevitably going to have to face in the future. Another thing he had not shared with Izuku was the fact that he was going to be teaching at UA from now on. Even though he still had the embers of One for All within him thanks to only using it actively a few times in the past 10 months, the time he could spend on his buffed up form was slowly but steadily decreasing, meaning that One for All was truly no longer his, but entirely Izuku's. That meant that he could no longer work as a pro hero actively if he wanted to conserve One for All for enough time to be of help when that man eventually emerged again. The fact that it would give him the chance to keep an eye on his successor and help the next generation was icing on the cake. Thankfully, The UA staff heeded his warning about the upcoming threats, and they had agreed on harshening and increasing the intensity of the hero program, subtly tweaking it to focus more on combat than other aspects of being a hero. It was something that needed to be done in light of the storm that was coming. Anyways, the reason why he had not told Izuku about this was because he knew that black-haired boy with green highlights would think that he used his influence to get him accepted into the school. And while All Might was above doing such things, that wasn't even the reason why Izuku shouldn't be worried about the possibility of that happening. The real reason was, his phone rang. Toshinori reached into his pocket and pulled it out. He stared at the screen for a few seconds before a nervous look appeared on his face, his entire body trembling in sudden terror. With a shaky sigh, he answered the call. Hello? An elderly came from the other side. Toshinori-kun. What is this I hear that you will be teaching at UA? Finally decided to pass on one for all and settle down for once. You should have done that years ago, if you asked me, you dumb kid. Cringing, but somehow still grinning, All Might stammered a response. Yes, Grand Torino-sensei, sir. I will be working for UA High School as the Foundational Hero Studies teacher for Class 1A. And, yes. I have already passed on one for all. I did so 10 months ago. As a matter of fact, I have just finished training him to an acceptable level, you could say. There was a moment of silence from the other end before the elderly voice spoke again, this time far calmer. I see. Good for you, Toshinori-kun. It was about damn time. You are even older than even she when you were made her successor, said Grand Torino, and the both stayed silent for almost a minute in respect of the memory of Toshinori's mentor and Grand Torino's closest friend. When the moment was over, Grand Torino continued. So, is the brat you chose any good? All Might started to laugh happily as he threw his head back. Don't go around losing your mind before even I do. All Might calmed down, but a few stray chuckles left him as he answered. Good, you ask? If there is one thing I am 100% sure of, Grand Torino-sensei, is that Izuku Midoriya, the 9th bearer of One for All, is easily stronger than I was when I graduated from you. Eh? And he is only 15 years old. There was a pregnant pause on the other end for almost 30 seconds, and when Grand Torino spoke, only one word was uttered. Damn. Momo Yaoyorozu knew that coming to Musutafu in order to be close to UA was her only course of action if she wanted to attend the best hero school there was, considering that she lived with her family in the Aichi prefecture. She had gotten accepted by the school thanks to the recommendation she got from her family, and while she had aced the written test, she had been hoping to test her might against the famous practical exam of the prodigious school. What she was regretting now, however, was insisting on her coming alone on her trip. She loved her parents with all her heart, yes, but they could be so overbearing that at times she got annoyed by them. The only reason that was her only reaction was because she knew that they did it out of love and worry for her, not because they wanted to control who she was and what she wanted to do. They had even gotten the recommendation because of an offhand comment from her during dinner about wanting to apply for the UA. They told her what they did for her as a birthday gift. It had possibly been the best day of her life so far, when they had wanted to come with her in order to help her settle down, explore the city, and make sure she had everything she needed at the freaking penthouse they had arranged for her to live at. She had put her foot down immediately, claiming that she wanted to start learning to fend for herself, and that she couldn't do that if they accompanied her. Thankfully, her parents were intelligent enough to see that she was right, and they needed to give her the freedom she needed to grow and become a woman, since she was aiming to become a pro-heroine and all that. Mom, I blame you and your dominant genes for this, she screamed in her mind as she backed away from the 3 shady-looking men that were leering at her with lecherous eyes and sick grins. One of them had tentacles instead of arms, the other had a shark-like face with matching teeth, and the last one looked normal except for the fur that covered his face and the sharp-looking claws on his hands. Stay back! She shouted at them as she put her suitcases in between them as a shield. Though outwardly she appeared quite calm, on the inside she was panicking. She could use her quirk, creation, to deal with them, but she didn't want to get in trouble on her first day in the city and jeopardize her already assured entrance to UA. Instead, she was waiting for them to get close enough to smack them around using the hand-to-hand techniques her father taught her to precisely deal with situations like this one. Come on, Missy. Show us a good time and we might make it worthwhile for you, said the one with the fur and claws, the other two nodding in agreement as they approached. But thankfully, just when she was about to drop her suitcases and ram her knees into the crotch of the man with tentacles, a flask of water that still had some, judging that some of it jumped out when it suddenly smacked into the temple of the man with the shark-like features so fast that she barely managed to see it. The flask was thrown with so much strength that it sent the man flying, already unconscious and with a nasty cut that was already bleeding. Momo didn't even have time to turn in the direction from which the flask had come flying from when a teen her age, or maybe older, came almost flying and rammed his knee into the face of the man with tentacles. She watched with wide eyes as he then brought his elbow down to strike him on the top of the head while still airborne. Then, with a swiftness that had her almost gasping, he grabbed the man by his tentacles, turned around, pivoted and slammed him into the ground with enough strength to leave an indent on the concrete of the alley in the shape of the man, who was unconscious. Momo's eyes widened when she saw the man with fur and claws approach the teen from behind at speeds she knew would be difficult for even her to deal with, brandishing his wicked claws ready to impale him through his back with them. "Watch out!" Still, she knew that it was too late for him to look back, assess the threat and respond accordingly. So, it was to her shock, and that of his attacker more than likely, when he tilted his body to the side without looking his head and let the claw pass by him harmlessly with only a few centimeters to spare. Without turning his head, his arm sharply came up and he caught the attacker on the nose with his elbow, breaking it and stunning him as his head snapped back due to the force of the attack. The teen then spun once. With a hop he caught the temple of the man with the back of his foot after performing a perfectly executed reverse roundhouse kick. The man promptly dropped like a sack of potatoes. Still wide-eyed, Momo stared at the teen as he breathed out slowly, something she recognized to be done when one wanted to calm down from a moment of sudden excitement. She blushed prettily when she saw how handsome he was in the definition of his perfect musculature, something she could appreciate thanks to the sleeveless shirt and shorts he was wearing. She shook her head and averted her eyes when he bent down to pick up his flask. "Hey, are you alright?" When she heard his voice, which was very pleasant to her ears might she add, she turned towards him only to blush again when she saw his concerned green eyes. She also noticed a bit of a blush across his slightly freckled cheeks, and the way his spiky and curly hair complemented nicely his angular face. Coming here to live alone might not be so bad after all, she thought to herself almost giddily before she answered. "Oh yes, I am, thanks to you," she said, bowing deeply. Seeing this, Izuku blushed as he started to wave his hands almost frantically. "There's no need to thank me. It wasn't a big deal, really. I was just passing through and saw your predicament. I just had to help," he said, speaking truthfully. Since he was just walking home, and it was getting late, he decided to take a shortcut through the shadier bit of the city. No sooner had he realized what was going on thanks to the passive mantra of his Haki, he had come running to help. He chuckled nervously. "Besides, to me it looked like you were about to do the same to them." As he looked her up and down, Izuku told himself that he was giving her the inspection of a martial artist. He was certainly not appreciating how good her mature body looked in her blouse, short jean skirt, and knee-high boots. Catching him checking her out, Momo felt embarrassed, but strangely thrilling to see that he liked what he saw. She smiled at him humbly as she rubbed her right forearm with her left hand. "Well, yeah. I couldn't use my quirk to deal with them since it is against the law to do so without a license, but I know enough to hand to get by. But seeing the speed at which the man with the fur and claws moved, I doubt it would have been as easy for me as it was for you. It didn't even take you 15 seconds to knock the three of them out." She complimented him, also enjoying how he blushed at her praise. I have practiced martial for more than a decade now, so dealing with men like them is easy for me since I am used to fighting others that are way better than me," he said, which was the truth. While he was stronger and more powerful than his masters at the dojo even before his training with All Might, they could still kick his ass easily because of their experience, and having already mastered the many techniques of their art. And the less said about his bi-weekly spars with All Might the better. Instead, he focused on another thing. She said, "So, what can you do with your quirk?" Momo raised an eyebrow at the way he worded the question but shrugged her shoulders, making Izuku blush as the motion resulted in her prominent assets doing interesting things. She of course noticed this, but instead of being annoyed, she was embarrassed that he noticed, amused at the fact that he looked away, looking even more embarrassed that she felt, and strangely happy that she had that effect on him. I can create anything using my body's fatty tissue as long as I am familiar with the components of what I am creating, she explained and raised her hand to conspicuously create a pair of dices that seemingly emerged from the back of her hand. Whoa! The way said it, and the way he was looking at her hand made Momo feel somewhat self-conscious. Wait, are you telling me that if you know the components of an atomic you can just make it using your quirk? He exclaimed, looking at her in awe. Blushing under his stare, she averted her eyes shyly. Theoretically speaking I could, yes. But since I have to use my fat cells to create something, there is a limit to just how much, and how powerful, the creation would be. I would have to eat constantly for a long period of time while creating the parts of the bomb. And then I would have to assemble it, which would take more time. Izuku nodded in understanding. That makes a lot of sense. But still, holy crap! With enough time and food in your hand you can do literally anything. The world is lucky that someone with a quirk like yours isn't a villain. He trailed off and he raised an eyebrow at her. You are not going to be a villain, are you? He asked, narrowing his eyes at her. Momo rolled her eyes, seeing the playful glint in them, and scoffed in good humor and feeling oddly flattered that he would consider someone like her a very serious threat if she turned a villain. For your information, no, I'm not planning on becoming a villain. Quite the contrary, actually. I will be attending UA High School when the new school term starts, she said with a proud tilt of her voice. Izuku's eyes lit up. That means that we will be seeing each other next week during the examination, he said with excitement and happily. When she failed to respond, he noticed that she was averting her eyes and her feet were shuffling in nervousness. What's the matter? I kinda got a recommendation and because of it I don't have to take the practical exam, which means that technically I have already been accepted even if the acceptance letter hasn't been sent yet, she said nervously. She expected for him to yell at her and accuse her of cheating like her former friends at her old high school did when she told them. For some reason, the thought of this boy hating her made her chest feel almost painfully tight. Damn, you must be more awesome than what I already thought you were. You got a recommendation to enter UA and it got accepted? I can't wait to see what you are capable of. Sorry. I'm only realizing that I don't know your name. Mine's Izuku Midoriya. Nice to meet you, he said. She blinked at him in shock for a few moments before her cheeks turned a healthy pink, and she smiled her biggest smile in quite some time. She enjoyed how his cheeks colored as he looked at her. My name is Momo Yaoyorozu. Please call me Momo Midoriya-kun, only if you call me Izuku, was his immediate and almost automatic response. Both of them blushed in embarrassment as they finally realized what they were requesting of the other despite having just met. A few seconds later they started to laugh. The merriment continued for a few long moments, and when they finally calmed down, Izuku presented his arm for her to take, and with an exaggerated flourish he indicated towards the exit of the alleyway. Well, Momo, I will have to insist on escorting you to your abode, seeing that this part of town is not the best place for a beautiful woman such as you. Blushing at the compliment, Momo accepted his offer, linked her arm with his, smiling when he took one of her suitcases from her with the hand of the arm that she wasn't holding. The kind offer is appreciated and very much accepted, good sir. You will be doing this lady a grand service with your actions, she said, following him on his game. Excellent, he exclaimed grandly before with a flourish, he pulled out his cell phone after settling her suitcases on the ground. But first, I believe the authorities should be notified of what this lot tried to do to you, yes? They should arrive here in a few minutes and taking our testimonies won't take more than 5 minutes. Momo nodded in agreement, and she watched as he called the police and reported the incident. Knowing that they were going to be waiting in the alley for a few more moments, Momo asked him something that had been nagging at her since they talked about her quirk. So, what's your quirk? I noticed that you only use martial arts to deal with those guys. Izuku grinned at her, and he raised the hand that had been holding his cell phone and had yet to reach to grab her suitcase again. Her eyes widened when she noticed that his hand was now covered by a black, shiny substance that looked sturdier than steel. My quirk is called Haki, ambition, and what it does is, with their arms still linked, Momo and Izuku continued to speak about their quirks and experiences ever since discovering them, only being interrupted by the arrival of the police force a few minutes after Izuku started to speak about his quirk. Later, Izuku would find himself shocked at how easy it was to speak to Momo, and how the only thing he didn't tell her was about One for All and his connection the number one hero. That was something he was only going to share with his successor when he eventually had to choose one in the future. And finally, it was when they arrived at her apartment building that they noticed that have been linking arms since just after introducing themselves to each other. Both were embarrassed, and the amused looks everyone was shooting them had not helped at all. Still, they exchanged numbers and promised each other to stay in contact regularly through the time period it would take from today and the start of the term. For some strange reason, Izuku felt enough pride on himself to compare it to the feeling of having completed All Might's program to the letter. He dared say that the feeling was somehow better, but he couldn't quite tell why was that. When he arrived at his house later, Inko only had to take in his faraway look and flushed cheeks for a few seconds before her eyes widened. When Izuku slipped into his room and closed the door behind him, she blinked in shock. "He has yet to be accepted and he has already met a girl that he likes?" she asked herself quietly before suddenly fist-pumping the air aggressively. "Yes," she hissed in delight. "Grandbabies! Here I come! Get ready to be spoiled to death by Inko Abakan." Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible journey today. I hope you enjoyed exploring the fascinating what-if scenario of Deku. The possibilities were truly mind-blowing. If you found this video entertaining, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel. Your support means the world to me and inspires me to bring you more captivating content in the future. Stay tuned for more exciting what-if stories and other amazing videos coming your way. Until next time, take care, stay curious.